All right. Okay. So Be'ez Hashem, I'll talk a little bit about Sefira and to understand what is the avodah, what is the work that we're supposed to be doing during the time of Sefira, during this time period between Pesach and Shavuos. Okay, so we know that the Torah tells us that it has to be, you have to count. The question is, what's the purpose of the counting? What is the purpose of the counting? So the Torah, we find a few times that the Torah talks about counting, Safalo, Shivas Yom, there's something, the idea of counting, but it's always towards a certain objective. You're counting to figure out like when this time is going to be. Shavuos is always 50 days after Pesach, after the second day of Pesach. So what's the idea of counting? So there's a Aram. Aram brings down a medrash, and it's the same thing also you see in the Omer. The Rambam brings it down, the same idea. That Klal Yisrael left Mitzrayim on Pesach, and Shavuos. So you can read from the Omer, Chela Gimel. Shavuos hu yom Matan Torah. Shavuos is the idea of Matan Torah, the beginning of the Torah. Lahagdal yom hu yom min hamoyer rishon alav. Kemi shemamtim bo yaneman shavuos shu moiner hayom gam hashayis. The idea of counting the Omer is simply the idea of longing, tshuka, gaguim, the idea of kisufim, waiting for that time. As imagine someone would say that, there's your loved one is coming to visit you, so you count down till this time will come. And that's the reason for Sefiras HaOmer, because the tachlis, the idea of going out of Mitzrayim was tabnan salkim al-harazeh. The tachlis of going out of Mitzrayim was to receive the Torah. So therefore, Klal Yisrael, the idea, this is also brought down, the Rav brings in Shem Medrash, it's brought down the Medrash, that Klal Yisrael was waiting and anticipating to receive the Torah, and therefore they're counting. This is one idea that's brought down in the Kadmonim, the Rishonim bring down this idea, that's the reason for counting. It's interesting, we're going to get to this idea soon, but it's interesting that just to note that the Avudram, which was a Talmud, a Spanish scholar in the 1300s, the Talmud of the Baal HaTurim. He learned in Toledo by the Rosh Hassan. So he wrote a sefer called Avudram. It's a very by the way, Avudram means dirham. He was actually a money changer, right? A dirham is a father of a dirham, money. Himself or his family, but they called him like this. That was his name. It wasn't his last name. That's what they called him. And he wrote a sefer, a very nice sefer. It's basically he collected all the minhagim and all the customs on the siddur and the Yom Tovim, and he wrote like a little description about each thing. The whole nuschat tefillah, he has little interpretations of this what tefillah is. And then he talks about Sefiras HaOmer. He brings down 3 reasons why we count. So this is a reason from the Rishonim why we count. One is that it's a time of Tzir, that people are busy with their fields. Certainly people that lived in in agriculture society. And so therefore we count the days to Shavuos. So you shouldn't get caught up in business and you forget when is exactly that you have to go to Yisrael, you have to go to Eretz Yisrael, you have to go to Yerushalayim. So you're counting the time to this market when Shavuos is coming. People are very busy. It's a busy season. So it's a busy season. In the ancient world, I don't know if people understand this, but in the winter was a very quiet time. If you lived on a farm, you lived in some type of agriculture society, then this was a very busy time of the year. So count. So you should know when you have to go to go to Yerushalayim. And the second reason is, this is the reason that's brought down the Medrash. There was a person that was in jail, and he cried to the king to redeem him, to set him free. So there was a time, the king said, I'm going to give you a time when I'm going to let you out of jail, and you're going to marry my daughter. And he was waiting for this time, counting down the time, when could he get out of jail and marry the daughter. So obviously this is a mashal of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and a mashal of Yom Chasanas is Matan Torah, the idea of getting married, is the idea of Matan Torah. So this is a mashal of, again, it's a chukka, it's longing, yearning. The process of going out of Mitzrayim, of going out of Egypt, is only the first step. It's only a freedom from something, but it's not a freedom towards something, right? There's two types of freedom. You can be free of something, doesn't mean you're free towards something. You can be free of a negative relationship, let's say, but you're not free in a new relationship. So Yetzias Mitzrayim is a freedom from the negative, but there's nothing positive. It's just we're no longer enslaved. Okay, that's a gewaldige thing. That's great. But what are we? What are we? So Matan Torah is the culmination of Yetzias Mitzrayim. It's you're free from something, and now you have a new reality, which is Matan Torah. And that when you finally receive Torah, now you become really free. Not only free from oppression, but you're free to act in a higher way, in a deeper way. So this is the step of going out of Mitzrayim and marrying the king's daughter, Kaviyach. Right? That's the medrash, the mashal. The third reason is brings on Sha'olam b'tzar and Pesach HaShuas, that the world is in a very tsar place, restricted place, a place of judgment and din, because it's a time of judgment of the waters and judgment of the tfuah of the grains. So therefore, therefore the idea of counting is to awaken tshuva. That a person should be inspired to cry, and the person should mask the tsar oilam, the hardship the world's going through. I know this sounds very not familiar to you, this reason, but this is actually, this third reason, maybe one day we'll talk about this, this reason is actually the primary reason that the Rishonim, like Rabbeinu Yerucham, bring down why the time of Sefira is a time of restriction or a time of katmos. It has, I don't want to say nothing to do with the death of the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva, but it actually, if you look in the early Rishonim, and Tolos Adam V'Chavan, some of the early Rishonim, when they bring down this idea of not cutting your hair, for example, one of the things that is brought down in the early Rishonim, before talking about not getting married, is that it's a time of din. At the time of Pesach, between Pesach and Shavuos, is a time of din. The time of Tsar, there's a time of there's a din on the Tfuah, there's a din on the Mayim, and therefore it's a time of restriction, and therefore it's a time that we shouldn't celebrate. We'll see soon. But this is the third reason. We'll go back to the second reason. The second reason has to do with which is the classic understanding that Sefiras HaOmer is a time of desire, that you're counting for desire, for your longing. It's a longing, you're counting. But the truth is that when you think about this, that longing, yearning for something, if you yearn for something, you usually count down. For example, let's say if there's a rocket ship that has, I don't know if you long for the rocket ship to take off, but if the rocket ship has to take off in 10 seconds, you don't count 1, 2, 3, 10, blast off. You actually count 10, 9, 8, 7. Why? What's the oimik? What's the depth of this idea? It's very simple. Because when you're counting down, the intention is not to count. The intention is to get to 0. Right? So you're just counting down to get to the point where you're getting the result. Now, if the tachlis, if the intention of counting Sefiras HaOmer would be to get to Matan Torah, then what you would do is you would count 49, 48, 47, blast off, and then it's Matan Torah. You'd count down. Why are we counting up? Counting up suggests that there's an intention in the counting itself. If I'm counting to 10, means one is, if I count, let's say 10 people for a minute, right? I'm counting 1, 2, 3, not 1 or 2, whatever. What I'm saying is that 1 is important, 2 is more important, 3 is even more important. But each one has a number. So when you're counting Sefira and you're saying that it's only for the purpose of tshuka, longing and yearning to get to the place of Matan Torah, to get to receiving the Torah, then you would count down. Now, if you look at the chinuch brings down the same reason of chayfetz, the same idea of longing, which is what the Rambam brings, the Ram brings. He brings on the same reason. Sefer Chinuch is also written during that time period in Spain. We're actually not even sure who wrote the Sefer Chinuch, but in the time of the Rashba, that he writes that now, what is the idea of counting? Counting is the intention that you're trying to get to the place of the end of the count. You're trying to get to 50, so you count 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm getting to that point. So then he says, so therefore, because that it shows on the strong desire to get to that place. And he seems to answer this question. He says that if the intention is to get to the end, right, that you have a desire to get to Matan Torah, you leave Yitzis, I'm sorry, we're getting to Matan Torah. If the desire is to get to Matan Torah, to get to Shavuos, then you should count down, right? So he says the reason why we're counting the Sefiras HaOmer is to get to the end. If the question is why to get to the end, why don't we start from the higher number and go lower? Which means because that's the intention. He says because if you start from the higher number, because if you start from 50 or from 49, you're going to say, oh, it's 49 days away, it's too long. So like this is what the chinuch answers. Like this, you start from 1 because you're slowly getting to the point of 50, but you don't want to start from the number 50 because it sounds too far away. Sort of like a pshara between these two ideas. I'm longing to get to the end, but since the end is going to be many weeks from now, I'm going to start counting from up down instead of from bottom up, from bottom up instead of from top down, because it's too long to get away. This is what the chinuch answers this question. You're following what the answer is? Sort of this type of answer, where the intention, what the chinuch is saying is to get to the end. That's the intention. But it's too long away, so you count up instead of down. We're going to try to understand this a little bit deeper. And the deeper means that Al Pi Soid, we'll try to understand this, that if we say that the intention of the counting is to create a longing, if the intention of counting is to create longing to get to that place, maybe we need some more chairs, maybe, yeah. If the intention of the counting is the longing to get to that place, then you would count down. So I understand why counting is. But if we say that the counting is also a process of counting up, we must say that sort of it's like a paradoxical thing. That on one hand we're counting to get to the place, but on the other hand, the journey itself has an intention. Okay, that's going to be what we're trying to understand, what the oimik of that, how that works. So we'll start with what it comes out from the AriZal. So the AriZal explains the idea of Pesach and the whole process of Pesach from Pesach to Shavuos like this: that Pesach is Kipasach Hashem. Pesach represents Hashem skipped over, which means that on Pesach night we're gifted godless, which means that Pesach, the night of Pesach, before we leave Mitzrayim, we're in a state of the 49 levels of Tumah. Even though the Ari doesn't actually write this anywhere, it doesn't say these words, but that about the 49 levels of Tumah, it doesn't say clearly in the Kisvei, in the writings of the Ari. It's later, it's brought down by many of his Talmidim, and not by the Ari himself. The Medrash says that halal avodah zarah, halal avodah zarah. That when we came to Kriyas Yamsuf, the Malachim argued and said these people are idol worshippers and these people are idol worshippers, which means that in Mitzrayim we reached a very constricted place, a very low place, that in order for us to be redeemed, to receive the Gula, we couldn't go through B'shuva B'nachas Tivashem. It was not possible for it to come in processes. It had to happen b'chipazon. It had to happen very quickly. It's like, for example, there's some person that's very, let's say a person gets into a crazy state. Let's say a person is like be'erach in a normal state, but is acting crazy. So you can tell the person, I don't understand why you're doing this. You can rationalize with this person to tell him you're acting very silly. You're overreacting. You're not in a good place, right? You can do that in a certain time. What happens if your child, is like just having a tantrum? Yeah, you can't sit down with a kid. Those of you have already, most of you guys are old and understand this, so it's getting better. But if you have a small child that's having a tantrum, sometimes you have it with a big person there. Not often, a small child. That you have a kid's having a tantrum. Let's say it's a kid, a person has a katnus. And you can't start rationalizing, saying, why are you overreacting that your toy broke? I'll get you your next toy tomorrow, and I can feed that. You have to sort of like break the child out of this mold of craziness. And you have to sort of show a possibility of godless, of expansiveness to this child that will shake him out of his stupor, out of his reality, right? Because you can't rationalize with this person. Because when a person is very stuck, and a person's a nichnas v'ruach shtus, a person's in a very bad place of shtus, of fallacy, there's no way to rationalize a person out of this. He has to be induced into like a state, like some overwhelming state that will push him out. Okay, so this is what happens on the night of Pesach. That Klal Yisrael was in a state of the Memta Shari B'tumah, or in a very low state, and Hashem is basically saying, if I'm going to let these people be any longer, they're not going to be able to get out. They're going to be so stuck. This is the Nun Shari Tumah. Of course, there could be miraculous events, but it means that in a natural state, they're going to be in such a bad place that nothing's really going to allow these people to get out of this place. They're going to be stuck forever in this place of slavery, enslavement. So what's the narrative? The narrative is Kipasach Hashem, that something miraculous happens, and we're gifted godless. That the greatness, the expansiveness, the moichin, the godless, the greatness, the expansiveness that we experience, which is called godless rishon, and by the end of the Seder, maybe godless sheni, which is the idea of like, godless means clarity. That's what it really means. It's a munah, it's clarity, it's vision, it's like, I know exactly what I should be doing. This is gifted to us. Our greatness, the godless that we're trying to achieve, is gifted to us on Pesach night. Okay, that's what happens on the Leil Seder. That's what we start. We start from godless, and right away we make Kiddush, so it's godless. Then, unfortunately, and this is what happens a lot of times, the next morning, some people find it that it's because a person has a hangover, because they drank a lot of wine, or drank ate a lot of matzah, or ate too much more. But usually, the next morning, you don't feel that great. Maybe physically, maybe also like, maybe even nafshistic, you don't feel so great. And some people feel like, really, I did the Seder and it worked. Did it really work? Did it happen? Was I really successful? This nefila, if a person does experience or doesn't, is because what you were given was a gift. It was gifted to you. That elation, that experience that you had, was a matana. That was a gift. And that was Yitzias Mitzrayim. Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim and created a new reality for ourselves. This gift is a temporary gift. It's a glimpse of the potential, and you receive that potential. Then comes the days of Sefira, and the days of Sefira is the tshuka, the desire, the longing, the kesufim, to recreate that godless that you experienced, that greatness that you experienced, but now it's going to be what the AriZal calls godless shlishi. And godless shlishi is going to be the highest level of godless, which is the godless of Keser, which is the night of Shavuos. Which is Keser is this complete transparency and clarity of exactly my desire and my resended today, my reason for being in this world, my ratzon, my tainug. Why am I here in this world? What's the real reason for me being? Why am I me in this world? To understand it, to be clear at it. So again, there's godless that's given, taken away, and then recreated through the longing of the times of Sefiras. The Sefiras, the kesufim, the longing. I'm longing for Matan Torah, but the depth of the idea of the longing for Matan Torah, to receive a Matan Torah, is the depth to actually experience what it means to be in the state of cheres, of cheres minei Sahara, cheres malach hamavos, to be in that state of freedom of being immortal, to be beyond challenge, to be in that place. Now, it seems to be almost like, on one level, almost a little cruel. I don't want to say it like cruel, but it sounds like we're given this gift, and then we're taking away the gift, and then we're working to get back the gift. So the question is, when the original gift that's given to us, is it something that's beyond us, or it's really us? So if you say that you're you, and Hashem gifts you something that's beyond you, something that's beyond your normal capacity to receive, and then you're working the whole days of Sefira to recapture that level that was gifted to you, but it's not you. Or, like the Rashash says, it's not pshat. It doesn't mean that we're gifted something that is outside of who we truly are. What we're actually gifted on the night of Pesach is our truest self of the future, if we live our life to its fullest capacity. In other words, we're getting a glimpse of who we truly are in our future potential if it's actually actualized. So it's saying, I'm not giving you something, I'm giving you a gift that's beyond you. And therefore, now work on getting it. It's like someone says, I'm giving you $1 million. Let's say B'gashmi. Someone says, I'm giving you $1 million. I don't know if that's today a lot of money, but let's say I give you $1 million. Givaldik. I'm taking it away. I want you to work for it. So it's not mine. I felt very good when I had this money. Now I have to work to get it. I will or I won't. I don't know. The other way of saying is, no, I'm giving you something that's actually you. I'm showing you a picture of yourself now, in the present, of your potential future when it's actualized. I'm taking it away. Now I want you to work on actualizing yourself that you already were. So it's not a process of becoming, it's a process of rediscovering. It's very different, right? A process of becoming means I'm trying to become something in the future. I'm trying to attain something. A process of rediscovering means I'm trying to attain who I am already. Okay, so let's look a little bit in the language of the Ari and see the way the AriZal talks about this. By you see some time, Dushkin Shar Kavanas. In Pesach, hin be Yosef begonnen sein mein Chitzain in Nechas Ametachas Bigdusha. At Chaz Zoyar Ampin, they got Yosef Grua. Zoyar Ampin, which means Zoyar Ampin is us, Sefiras. We represent the Zoyar Ampin. Shoya Yosef Bechinas Gimel Kol Gimel. We're in a state of Ibor, which means we're in a state where our self is completely not actualized. Ibor means we're in an impregnated state, right? The self itself is impregnated. That's when we talk about Yitzis Mitzrayim. That is Lekach L'Goy Mekarev Goy. That was the birth of Klal Yisrael, right? Klal Yisrael reached outside Mitzrayim. That's why we put it's Rosh Ben Birkov. That the Carbon Pesach is like a fetal position. The AriZal writes, and that explains that this is the idea because we're being birthed. What the Eibusher wanted, Kaviyachal, is to create the birth of Klal Yisrael, the birth of Zohar Ampin, which is us, to give birth in our potential. In other words, the lagdiloy to the state that we actually are, and that will create the breaking of all the achiza of anything that's negative, that's not allowing that potential to be born. Let's turn the page.
I think it says what.
What's that?
Because for now, in this moment now, because the current state is when it's too much less.
Correct, but not the future state.
Yeah.
This is where the Rashash teases it out from the Ari. So the moichin, we said there's 3 levels of moichin. Galus Rishon, Galus Sheni, Galus Shlishi, which means moichin the Galus Rishon is bina. Bina is like an understanding of life. Chachma is like an intuitive understanding of your life. I'm talking about in personal, in your own avodah. And Keser is like not only just an understanding, but the Keser, the understanding of your whole Ratzon, your whole Gestalt. So this moichin shemer atach is galish nachas b'zeh b'lo Pesach. He knows zibuzeh on oimim halal gadol. Therefore, you say halal gadol. You sing great halal. Ema banus mecha. Bina is begadlus. So therefore, since Bina is begadlus, you can sing praise. Therefore, you only recite the first night of Pesach halal. Why don't we say halal gadol the entire nights of Pesach? Why are we medalgim? Because we lost that level. We lost the state that we were on the Leila Seder. That's why we can say halal gadol on the night of Seder. You can say on the full level of halal, but then we lose it. Then after we lose it, it starts entering stage by stage. From the second day of Pesach until we get to Nun Yom Shel Sefiras Omer, which is Chag HaShavuos. Therefore, it says in the Zohar, because there was such a chizah chitzayin, which means that Zohar Ampin, which was us on a microcosmic level, was such a state that if we wouldn't be induced to godless, we would be stuck in that state of klipa, of constriction, Once that chitzonim was misbattle, then everything returns back to its natural state, which means that it has to go step by step to get to the return of the level of godless. So it means you receive the godless, it's taken away from you, and now we long to create the godless that we experience. But now because we're longing for it, we're participating in the development of this godless. We yearn for the greatness that we experience, for the potential that we were. And since we're creating it, it actually, when it becomes in an integrated way, because it's madrega, so we actually achieve something.
We don't get back the Ketzayin, but
no, for sure no. Ketzayin is already gone. That's already gone by Yitzias Mitzrayim. So this diary is going to talk about that we became chayers be'etzem. This is the language of the Maral. That there's something that Yitzias Mitzrayim, even though we can get stuck back into the original states, we still don't have the achizah chitzoyin in the same way, which means that we're be'etzem chayers. In our essence, we're free. Like even if we're in a restricted state, it's not that we're be'etzem avodim. We're in our essence, we're slaves, and we're dipping into freedom. Right. In our essence, who we are is freedom. And then we can live in a state of slavery. That's what happened in Yitzias Mitzrayim. So that's the achizah, the chitzayin that was left. That we left this paradigm, this perspective that we're actually free people. And no matter the situation, even the chitzayinis, they can go through very hardship. But we're etzem, we stand ourselves as a free people. Gamma, does that talk about Sefiras? This is what also says in Sefiras Zohar. We're going to learn this in a second. That the idea of Sefiras HaOmer is to count the clean days, to return the woman, the Isha Yoina, the Baila. Isha Yoina, which would be Bina. Let's turn the next page. You'll see a shtick from the Zohar that says like this. The Zohar says this: you should count for yourselves. What does it mean? You should count for yourselves. That the mitzvah of Sefiras HaOmer is lachem. It's for you. It's not a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah on the bezin. It's a mitzvah on the yachid. It's a mitzvah on each individual person to count Sefiras. Lachem daika. That's like the pasuk says the suffer law, that the woman has to count 7 clean days. Yeah, Shiva Nikim. So you should become cleansed in the higher upper waters. Then you could receive the Malka can receive then the Torah. So then the question is, so why? If it's like 7 Shiva Nakim, so the laws of Shiva Nakim, right? So there's the idea of Shiva Nakim. Shiva Nakim is that there's a time of damun, there's a time of blood, and then there's a time where after there's a counting of 7 clean days, Shiva Nakim. So Shiva Nakim is then after the Shiva Nakim, there's the going into the mikveh, and then after the going into the mikveh, then there could be a reunification between the
If the whole Yemei sphere is to be boine zampen, zampen is duchra.
Yeah.
Where's the
connection?
It's
because he says he's also the Malki, you see that? It's Zohar Amp in the way it's Siachad the Malka. I'll explain it. I'll say it very quickly. I'll explain what he said. Because now, this is the Zohar is actually going to say this, because now it's not enough for Zohar Amp to be Siachad the Malka, which would be one level of Yichud. Now Zohar Amp and a Malka have to be Siachad the Bina. So it's a higher level of Yichud. Now, what that means is like this, that what's the tachlis? What's the tachlis of Yimei Nida? What's the tachlis of the idea of the separation? Exactly. Lechav Yishal Baila means that the whole intention of the separation is to create longing, is to create the kesufim, because when there's a tainik tmidi and a tainik. A tainik, there's a pleasure that's tmidius, is not a tainik, is not a pleasure. So the way to arouse kesufim and shukah, to raise the desire, there's a point of separation. Lechav Yishal Baila. So therefore, the intention of the separation is only to create the longing for the intention to reconnect, right? So this is what the Zohar is saying, that the when we learned in the Medrash that said that the whole idea of Sefiras HaOmer is kisufim for Matan Torah, is a chukah for Matan Torah, the Zohar is saying in its language, saying that is similar to the 7 days of Nikim, the 7 clean days, which is the idea of L'chav Yishal Bayit, to get to the place of Matan Torah, L'kabel Torah. So then the Zohar asks, but if that's the case, why do we count 7 weeks? Not 7 days, because Shiva Nakim is 7 days, not 7 weeks. So here the Zohar says Because begin the mescaline, the dachel, the mayim, the havnura, the nager, the nafkev iker mayim chayim. Because over here, the tahara is going to be in the mayim chayim. Okay, so there's two types of waters. There's two types of mikvahs. Now, for the most part, our mikvah today is ashboyer, is mekshavim that's collected in one place. That's considered a mikvah ksheya. There is no today. This is because there's no zava, but there is no idea of you have to be matayr in the mayim chayim, in a well, in living waters. But the Torah says that a zava has to be matayr in mayim chayim. It's not good enough for regular mikvah, which is rainwater. Because rainwater, even though it's alive, it's natural, right? It's not collected, it's not she'uvim, it wasn't collected water, but still, it is in a way collected, right? That's what it is. That's what a mikvah is. A mikvah mayim is you collect the body of the water in a natural way. It's connected to its nature. So that's one level of water. But then there's a real level that's really alive, that's really connected to its source, which is a spring. A spring is mayim chaim. So if the tahara, the purity that we're trying to achieve, is going to be connected with the Shiur Malchus, which is like the Imiyah, the higher level. So Imatata is going to be Malchus. Malchus, which would be the lower level, is connected to the mikvah. So you're going back into like the womb of the mikvah, the waters, to be rejuvenated, to recreate and connect the yichud. Right? That's generally the way a person has to rejuvenate. If a person is moitzizet, whatever, for every reason, that's the way a person rejuvenates. But if a person wants to rejuvenate with the Makor HaChaim, with the source of life, which the source of life is Bina Ilah, which is Emer Ilah, then it's not a good enough 7 days. 7 days would be the lower spheres, is all like, Sheva Shana, Esrim Shana, Meah Shana. The Zohar says that the lower numbers are all one-dimensional. So when you talk about the lower spheres, you talk about Malchus, it's 7 days. But when you talk about higher levels, it's 7 of 7. That's why it's Meah Shana, Esrim Shana, Meah Shana, that's higher. Chachabina, Esrim Shana, Meah Shana is Keser, because they're included. So in other words, it's multidimensional. The higher the level is, the more the multidimensional is. Right? Just think about this on a very simple level. If you have a child is very one-dimensional. You give them one thing, they're very happy. The second later, they're very sad. This is a one-dimensional. A more sophisticated person or an older person is more complex. The more complexity, that's the way life is. Anything that's more complex is a more evolved state of a form of life. So the complexity of something represents that it's multidimensional. In the world, if this tahara, this purity that's occurring on the level of malchus, then it's one dimensional. So it's 7 days. 7th day, this tahara, this purity. If you're talking about a multidimensional thing, which is a higher level of purity, which means that there's a purity to the Makor HaChaim, which you're purifying yourself in a way that you become part of the life force itself. Not just you're purifying from the life force, you become part of the chayis itself, part of the bina, part of the ema banus mecha. You become part of the mother that's giving birth, kaviyachol. If you become part of the mother that's giving birth, then you have to do 7 times 7, which is 49. Therefore, the Sefiras HaOmer, this is what it says, is on the 50th day. So these parallel to each other. Okay, this is a pisoid. This is what the Zohar says. This is what Kisari says, that the entire idea of Sefiras HaOmer, again, very simply, is that there is something that's given to us. We get a certain level of godless, a certain level of clarity, a certain level of expansiveness, moichin de godless, expansive mind. We receive it on the night of Pesach. Only the Leil of Pesach. After Leil of Pesach, it's taken away from us. This is why there's a big question amongst Kabbalah, also according to Halacha, when do you count Sefiras HaOmer? Do you count Sefiras HaOmer before the Seder or after the Seder, right? Because really, it wouldn't make sense to count Sefiras HaOmer, even though we do. Most people do, but it wouldn't make sense to count Sefiras HaOmer before the Seder because that's already katnas. So how do you start with Sefiras HaOmer? But a lot of Kabbalah, a lot of people, Siddim also count Sefiras HaOmer after the Seder because of that, because you want to go to godless. But the idea is, I receive godless, then it's taken away from me. I'm getting a glimpse of my potential, my future, of who I could become, of that being. Then I long for it, I yearn for it, I desire it. I want to reconnect to it, reconnect to that source, to recreate it. And the process of Sefiras HaOmer is counting me. I'm longing, I'm yearning. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, and every day I'm yearning to get to a higher place. This still doesn't answer the very fundamental question, which we asked: if the intention is longing and yearning and desiring, then count down. Isha that has to count Shiva Nakim, it doesn't say anywhere she has to count 1, 2, 3, or 4. I would imagine it's probably 7, 6, 5, 4 if she's holding Ibzi Halt cup. Because that was the idea. I'm waiting to get to the place of Yichud. Not I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So basically Sefiras HaOmer should be the same way. We should count down. Okay, so let's go into a little bit another topic, but you'll see how it's very negeh. Very quickly, it's a shtickle halachic issue. But there's a Ramban. There's a very famous Ramban. We say very famous, like the Welt Frek de Shaila. So the Zabel Welt Frek de Shaila is famous. And the Ramban writes in Kiddushin, the Gemara talks about mitzvah seishas mangram, shleis mangram. There's a Mishnah there, yeah. So the Ramban writes that there's certain mitzvahs that are time bound, and not time bound, right? That's Chazal explain. One is women are obligated, not obligated, and the Ramban gives an example of mitzvah seisha ein azman grama. Mitzvahs say that are not zman grama. One of the examples is kibbutz avim, bikurim, chalik adam, reish hagez, Sefiras HaOmer. Ramban writes the Sefiras HaOmer is not is ein azman grama. It's not azman grama. It's not time bound. Now, obviously, what does that mean? Not time bound. That's the whole idea. Is the Fatal Machas Shabbos. You count the Sefiras HaOmer. It is time bound. It seems to be that it's time bound. Now, of course, there were some people who say that there was actually a Tosat Tvos, that maybe it was originally Ramban or something else, and it added in. But what's the answer to this question? So there's a very different answer. A very famous answer of Divi Yecheskel from the Shinover, the son of the Divi Chaim, writes that the counting of the Omer is not Zman Gram, because Zman means that the Zman, the date, the Kufas Hashkana, is actually creates the time to count the Omer. And Sefiras HaOmer has to do with the time when the Sefiras HaOmer is bought. In other words, it's not Zman Gram, it's not the time bound. It's connected to when the Omer, and the Omer itself is time bound. Right? But that itself, the sphere is not time bound. There's a teretz from the CDH that he writes that the Neza asks the question again. It's a big tumult in the poskim. How can this? What do you do with this Ramban? He says that there's Zman Gram means that his teretz is that there's certain mitzvahs that come from time, and certain mitzvahs is itself the thing. In other words, there's a mitzvah that this mitzvah of, let's say, putting on tefillin, let's say it's Zman Grama, it's the time dictates when you should put on tefillin. Then there's something that is time. Sefiras HaOmer is time. It's not Zman Grama. It's not the time creates it. It is time. This is teretz. I have another simple teretz. This is what it's Megel Linyanenu. Teretz is Azai. Teretz is Azai. That like this. That Sefiras HaOmer is not that it's time bound, that it's bound to the constrictions of time, that when this time comes, that's when this mitzvah arises. Sefiras HaOmer is the mitzvah to create time. There is no thing called the days of Omer. Right? There's no 1 day of Omer, 2 days of Omer, 3 days of Omer. Svarat L'chaim Machas HaShabbos means Hashem gave us a mitzvah that we create time.
So it's subjective as opposed to objective.
It's totally subjective. Svarat L'chaim. That's why if you cross international date line, you know this whole theory. In other words, the Sefira is not, it arises from time, it's the creation of time. Okay, what is that? This will answer the question.
This is not a date, it's the completion
of that time. Exactly. Yeah, same idea. We're Kaveya, we created the time. When we count 1, it becomes 1. We count 2, it becomes 2.
So it's not when Shavuos is
correct. You're right. It doesn't have a time. No, that's another thing. That's so Samus talks about this because it's no Ma'anim Azman. That Matan Torah is no Ma'anim Azman. It's Ma'anim Azman. We don't even know where it happened. But there's something that we're.
It's the same.
Okay, that's a little bit the word like the Shiur. I'm saying something else. I'm saying that Sefiras HaOmer means that Sefiras HaOmer is the mitzvah.
I'm saying it's one level right.
Yeah, I'm saying we created it. The mitzvah is Hashem says, I want you to create time. Time is an elusive thing. What's time? What's the measure of time? Is time what's that? It's now 8:33. Why? Well, what creates that? What is the measurement of time? We have to be kaveh. When you say it's a zman today is the 10th day of Omer, let's say. We're creating it that is being the 10th day of Omer. It's not that it comes from the time. We're actually creating the time.
It's not the Yonalos Manazman, it's Hevenu.
Hivenus Osmanas. Exactly.
In fact,
Exactly.
Until you count, it's not that date.
It's not that date. Exactly. In other words, you could be if you cross international date line. This whole idea.
But also, someone here in this room could be by the day before.
That's what I'm saying. If you cross the international date, according to Lubavitcher, you would say that since it's it's a mitzvah on you on Yachid. So if you're counting your Sefira, even though you cross over the date line and it's counting the next day, you continue counting your days because it's yours. It's Yachid. That's another word. It's another word. Yeah, it's also you could say that. Could say that. I mean, they're showing it right because it brings up Tsar. Tosis brings that because it brings up Tsar. Because Harachim Yachid all based on English. Huh?
That's the day you should be able to count your.
It's another shayla. So it's a big machik shayla. So big machik shayla. The Tosis and the Bahag. But I just want to say something else. I just want to say that your kaveh desman. What's in the game? What's the oimik of this word? There's some oimik, and I'll tell you why I'm saying this word. Because what we're saying is that Sefira, Zman. What is Zman? Zman is a rhythm. Zman is a ratz of a shoyv. That's what Zman is, right? There's something that's called the Zman. There's the Medrash says something called Zman and Seder Zman. There's the rhythm of time. Before the creation of time, there's the rhythm of time. What's the Seder Zman? So Masadik Derech L'Secha writes that, and it's brought up in many Kabbalah, that the Seder Zman is the rhythm of Ratz V'Shayv, the going and returning, the movement. There's in and out movement. That's what Zman is. Flow, rhythm, okay, movement. When we're saying that we're Kaveh Zman, we create time, it must be that we're coming from a place that's beyond. We're coming from a place that's beyond the rhythm. In other words, if you're in the movement of the Ratz V'Shayv, you can't create a Ratz V'Shayv. You have to be a place of the stillness of the moment that's creating the time of the rhythm. You understand? You understand? Yeah. But one second. Let's just get this more. 1 second before we get to the nimshal of this. The oimik of Sefira means if I am creating rhythm, that means I am rhythmless because I'm standing above it and creating the rhythm. So Sefira has this sort of this paradoxical two natures in it. That on one hand it represents a certain rhythm of time, 1 + 2 + 3, right? You're moving forward. But on the other hand, I'm actually creating it. So if I'm creating it, means that I am in a place that I'm actually beyond the time. I'm the boyer of the time. Right? Bereshis bar likim. So all the Rishonim say, where's man created? Yeah, there's a grad, there's a magid. Where's this man created? Because this man has to be a creation. Once I say this bakim, this man, right? Time and space is a continuum. It's an existence. If I create it, I'm standing outside this man. Okay, let's hold this thought for a second. Okay, you have the word.
Actually, it's not so. Let's imagine everybody forgot to count.
Yeah.
We're not pushing Monday further.
If everyone forgot Sefiras Omer?
Everybody forgot, for whatever reason. Like, everybody just happens to be everybody forgot.
And what happened? So what's the question?
So,
Skipping
we know it's like that.
What do you mean?
It's
When you start on Yud Ches,
It's an interesting shayla. What do you mean if everyone forgot? This is God that. If you mean no one in the world count the Sefiras Omer, then it'll talk not be there. What do you mean? I'm just saying it won't be. There's a mechilta. There's a mechilta, and the mechilta writes that if everyone forgets Shabbos, or the mechilta writes a case in Parshas Yisrael, says, for example, everyone went out to war, everyone does a great Shabbos. So there's a ganze rocket chaver about this, that there's a swear to say that Shabbos is his battle. Because if Shabbos... Because the idea is if you're b'midbar, you know the Masa Shabbosu. So you're misbar Yavav Yomim, and the Radbaz writes that that's Taka Shabbos, not the Chumrah. It's Taka Shabbos because you created time.
Because weeks is not time. It's not.
That's right, exactly. Because it has no rhythm, it has no natural rhythm. Same avart.
We're not going to skip a date, so we're going to start next day if everybody forgets.
Yeah, technically, yeah. But that's what happens. That's what happens. Gemara says. Gemara says if you're in the midbar, you don't know when Shabbos is. So there's machlokes how you count, 1 to 6. But the point is that you're conveying the Shabbos. So technically, if no one counts Shabbos, the Shabbos will be a different day. There's a big conversation of Halacha and Al Pi Kabbalah. There's a Ramak. There's a famous Ramak that asks the Shaila if Shabbos is L'mayla Ben Azman. So how come in Australia you can have Shabbos at one time and in America you have Shabbos the other time? But it's so he says no. Shabbos is like this spiritual realm. And we draw down in time when we're connected. This day on Friday Shabbos. And if we count today, if you go count today's Shabbos, Friday Shabbos, it's Shabbos. It's not Shabbos in Australia. It's not a cosmic event.
The kibbutz of Yemen.
Yeah, in other words, the kibbutz Yom, we count time. I don't get it. This is a pialacha. This is the way it works. Okay, let's go back to the nekuda of this. The nekuda we're saying is that there's an element of sphera that's connected to the rhythms of time, and there's an element of sphera that's connected to the beyond the rhythm that's created the time. Okay, now let's try to take this a little bit into the sphere also in terms of Shem. Let's go quickly in terms of Shem. Elomas b'nei Yisrael. Shemaitim b'nei Ki kol ha'masois ha'yem beis. Remember masois, right? There was mem masois. Correspond to the mem beis days of Sir minus the days of Pesach. The haymates call me yomil v'ladei ad shuvei alalame. This is from a person's birth until he returns to his world. This is a very interesting language. He returns to his world. You can say it means Olam Haba, or it means until he reaches his place, his potential. Until he reaches from the time of his birth, until he reaches that point. When a person is being birthed into this world, coming out of your mother's womb, is he Yetzias Mitzrayim? Why is he Yetzias Mitzrayim? Because it's the birth of self. The self becomes revealed as an independent self. Instead of being Ibur plus Gavet plus, now all of a sudden you become an independent. You're no longer, Omer Yerachim. Until you go step by step, until you get to the place of Eretz HaChaim El Yoina, which is Chaim El Yoina. Chaim El Yoina is Bina. Until you get to the place of Bina, which is considered the higher form of life, which is the full understanding of what your existence is, and what's the tachlis of your reason, of your being. That you're going through these 42 steps. And the which talks about the stages of stopping and moving in the desert, that is Al Pi Hashem, and that's the states of Katnas Agadus. What's the state of Katnas Agadus? Look in the Degel. So the Degel's, this is the Degel, the Shtickle Degel, and the Degel in Parshas Valoischa brings it down more barichas, this idea of what the step means of constricted state and revealed state. When a person wants to teach his child how to walk, the next page. So what does he do? First you start walking with your child. This is a very famous mashal. The Chayzer brings this mashal also. That a person, first you want to walk with your child, so first you hold on to his hands. And you walk a little with him. And then you stop holding his hands, you walk back. That's how you let the child starting to walk. Right? So you don't hold the hand of the child always when you're walking. You stand in front of the child. You're face to face with the child. You hold the child's hand. You start walking with him. You step back a few steps. And then you let the child walk. Every time you want the child to walk more, you constantly move into a further distance. That's so the child should be able to walk on himself. That originally we received the tainug, the pleasure, the highest level of gadlus, which is Yetzias Mitzrayim, which is the night of the Seder. That's Hashem holding our hands and saying, I want you to walk. I'm going to walk with you. I'm right in front of you. I'm holding your hand. I'm walking with you. Then Hashem separates himself. We lose the gadlus. We lose that state of the greatness. Why? What's the tachlis? So we should be able to walk. Because if it's gifted to us, it's not like sufa. It's shameful bread. We're gonna lose it.
Is that what the katnas of spirit?
That's the katnas. That's what he say. Yeah, that's what he say. That gishalusa was when you get almost. So therefore, the whole idea of the katnas and the gadlus kiyadua that the whole intention of the katnas of the constriction is so that the person can get even to a higher level of gadlus. That's the tachlis. The tachlis of the katnas is to get to the higher place of the gadlus.
That's why the Malach is learning with the Iber before.
Yeah, same idea. Same idea. That's brought down as far. Same idea.
Also the idea of by a bris that is a gila that person's entire nefesh with Neshama.
Could be. Yeah, it could be the same thing. But I was saying that the malach learns them, so you're trying to relearn what you learned. In other words, so why do you learn? If you forgot? No, you're just relearning. You're rediscovering. Okay, so this is the part. Now, so we see now that what's the whole idea of sphere? This is very clear. That, I mean, the Degel's not talking about sphere, but he's talking about a masa and Gadlus Yishun and Sheni is it's obviously it's the same structure, and the Degel is Mitzayin in Parshas Masay to the idea of Sefira, and he says, go look what I wrote in Parshas Baal, because obviously this is it. This is the Torah. The Torah is that the whole idea of Sefiras HaOmer is to create the gaguyin, the tshuka. If I give you something and I take it away, what it will do, you'll desire it stronger, so you'll want to have it on your own. So you can walk on your own. It's not that you're gifted, you're holding your father's hand, your father's walking with you. I want you to actually walk. So the father holds the child's hand, lets the child walk, gifts the child with a certain whatever the godless that he can reach, and then says, I'm going to step back so you can slowly move and to get into a higher state of godless. So this is movement. You understand? This is the idea of sphere, which is the idea of the chukka, the gagoyim, the yearning, the longing, and the states of movement. But it's not over yet. The story is weit from over. Not weit, but it's almost over. But this is a very big nekuda, because we talked about this about zman and loy ma'anas, right? The being in the rhythm and beyond the rhythm. So the Paradoxical practice is the Shlit Pekutim Maran, and he writes like this: Isa Basar Omaris. You don't have it in the Sefer because Torah men. Isa Basar Omaris. It says Nasar Omaris. So right away I started looking. Where it says Nasar Omaris. It's not Mitzayin Nasar Omaris. Nasar Omaris is Maram Pano, one of the Gedolei Hamukabbalim of the Italian Mukabbalim. I couldn't find it, but I found something that looks like it. I'll tell you what in a second. I'll tell you what this Nasar Omaris writes. Elamasa b'nei Yisrael, and Elamasa. This is the journey of Klal Yisrael. The journey of Klal Yisrael, the 42 steps, the 49 steps, which is Sefira, to get to the place, to get to Eretz HaChaim, to get to the place of the destiny, to get to the place of Tainug, of pure pleasure, of pure Clarkite, of Eretz Yisrael, to get to that place. The desire to recapture, to get to that godless again. That the reason why they needed Eila Masa B'nei Yisrael, they needed the journey through the Midbar. Eila Masa B'nei Yisrael corresponds to Eila L'Kach Yisrael because they made an ego, because they made an idol. And Nimsa, Kol HaNesiyah Shel Adam, all the journeys of man, all the longings and the journey, Hu B'Shvil Kilkul HaEmunah Hanim Chinas Avodah Elulim. This is because there's there's a damage in the state of Emunah, which is connected to Avodah Zarah. I'll say what it says. Ki im haya mamin b'emunah shlema. Sheyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu lahazmin kol tzorkei. If a person was really a mamin, that there's no reason to journey, that everything that you have already is right here. Sheyazma HaKadosh Baruch Hu kol tzorkei, that you have it right in front of you. Lo yeh nois shum d'si. You won't have to travel anywhere. That the whole reason for the journey, the whole reason for the longing, is because you don't believe that it's already here. This is a shtickle that I found in the Yalkut Raveni. Here you have in the Yalkut Raveni. Yalkut Raveni is a sefer by Reuven Katz, one of the Kabbalah of Prague, a grandson, an anical of the Kli Yakar. On the bottom, mamish on the first page, on the shtickle Lamed Gimel, he says, I think this is the word. That Eila Masa B'nei Yisrael, that this is the Masa B'nei Yisrael, is because of Eila Kach Yisrael. That Eila, this journey, the need for the journey, the need to move, is because they were connected to Eila Kach Yisrael. They were connected to idols. They were connect. What's the idea of the idol? The Avodah Zarah. The Avodah Zarah means, the idol means that you're not connected to the thing itself. You're connected to a refraction of it. You're connected to a dimension of it. To the chitzonius. That's the Avodah Chav Mazalis. You're not connecting to the shoyers. You're connecting to the externality of it. You're not connected to the chayas of the thing. You're connected to the external part of the chayas. To that which is dead. Not that which is the L'kim Chaim, which is the life part of it. That if you're connected to the L'kim Chaim, you're connected to the source of life, then there's no reason for the journey. One of the shtickle. This is a shtickle Gemara, but it's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says like this. Then we'll apply everything together. The Gemara says... Huh? Zivche Mason. Yeah, Zivche Mason. Let's stickle this. The stickle Gemara. The one says that you have to be soisa not living from koime. Yeah, Rabbi Yossi said soisa not living from koime. Have a soisa not living shlomi koime. Have a soisa. If you destroy something, if you break apart of something, let's say a structure, the only way you're mechuyev if you're soiser amanas livnus mekoyme. If you're soiser this thing in order to create it in the same place. If you're soiser this to build somewhere else, you're not, because then it's just kilkul. You're not chayav in Shabbos. So the Gemara asks, what do you mean? How do we know the whole thing of soiser, of destroying something, from the Mishkan? Mishkan is soiser amanas livnus mekoyme because they were soiser the Mishkan here. They traveled. That's the memories of Masais. They traveled. They went to the next journey. They stopped the next journey. Then they built a Mishkan. So it's not in the same place. So what does the Gemara answer? The Gemara says, Shani Hasan. It's different there. Given the Ksiv al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Pi Hashem says not Since it says al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Pi Hashem Yisol, it's Bim Koyme. What's the word? What's the Omer of the word? So this is a word from Chaim Shalevis in that is Sichas Musa. He writes a gewaltige word. It's a chassidische pshat. It's very that what pshat says someone else in the coming. Let's say for example, if let's say you're an adult and you're traveling to California for Pesach. Okay, so you're going to California. You're going here. Here's one place, and now you're at this place. You're moving from California. You're going to another place. That's the travel. What happens if you're traveling with a baby, a 1-year-old, an infant? And you're traveling, you're holding the baby, and you're traveling from California to New York on a plane. Where's the baby? With you. The baby's always with you. The baby's not in California, and the baby's not in New York. Wherever is the place is in the mother's lap. Wherever the mother is, that's where it is. That's Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Pi Hashem Yisrael. That the reason why it's why is it destruction to build in the same place? Because Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Pi Hashem Yisrael. Since we're traveling at Hashem's lap, Kaviyachol. So therefore, any place that we go, that is Mikoyme. In fact, that's the Omer of the Gemara. Now let's take this word and try to understand what we're talking about in the sphere. The whole idea of the Masois, the whole idea of the movement, the whole idea of Zman, the whole idea of progress is to create a tshuka. Tshuka means, by definition, a desire means that I long for something that is not yet present. Right? I'm longing for something that I want to have. Right? I had it, I lost it, I want to have it again. Right? So I'm longing for that. I'm in a relationship, it's taken away from me. I'm longing to get back the relationship that I have. In the world of the Masois, in the world of the journey, in the world of the Sefira, where Sefira is accounting as a Ksufim, there's an inherent absence. Right? There's an inherent absence of the presence. Comes along the Maram Panu and says that Eilam Asa B'nai Yisrael, the only reason why there's a journey is because we entered the world of journey. We entered the world of separation. Because we subscribe to the idol worship. And we instead of Areich Hashem Lekecha, we said El Lekach Yisrael. Because we said El Lekach Yisrael, that created within us a place of absence, and therefore we long to recreate. Because we created the separation within our own consciousness. So because we created our own consciousness, the only way to get back to the destination is through the journey. So the journey allows us to, because in other words, we entered in the world of journey, which is the world of separation, that I'm still moving towards something, the place of rhythm, the place of Zman, because it's not here, therefore I'm working to get it. But in a place that's beyond the Eilam Asois B'nai Yisrael, the place that's beyond the journey, like in the Oasis of Ramach, the place that's beyond the journey, if I believe that it's right here, it is here. Because Al Pi Hashem Yachnu, Al Pi Hashem Yisrael. It's like it's the exact same place. I don't need to journey anywhere the moment I recognize that it's actually present. So this is the Omer of Sefiras Omer. The Omer of Sefiras Omer is actually this sort of delicate, paradoxical balance where because we live in the place of absence, we journey to a place of fullness, recognizing that we're already full already. Because we live in a place of absence and a place of longing, and we're not connected to the thing itself, because if we were connected to the thing itself, there'd be Matan Torah right now. We wouldn't need the Messiahs. We didn't Eilam Asa B'nai Yisrael. If I believe that everything that I have right now, I don't need anything. Because we come from a place of lack. Because we come from a place of lack, we need to count. But the paradoxical nature, what the Rashash is saying, what AriZal is saying, the paradoxical nature of Sefira is to say, you should know that what you're longing for is who you are already. Because if you're longing for something that's outside of you, then it's not it's not real. Because I'm longing for something that I could maybe achieve. So it says something. No, you're not looking for something that's in Matan Torah is not something that the Chayes of Matan Torah is not something that I wish I could have. It's who you are. What happened on Pesach night was the Gilui that's beyond Sefiras HaOmer. Svartul Chamimachas HaShabbos means the reason why we could count Sefiras HaOmer is because it's coming from Pesach. The only way we can count Sefiras HaOmer is because it's Machas HaShabbos. What is Shabbos? Shabbos is presence. Shabbos is Pesach. That's what Pesach is called Shabbos. Why? Because it's Mitkatcha V'Kaimer. It comes on its own. It's a gift. The reason why we can count is not, if I say normally, I want you to count and long for something. Okay, I'm going to try. I'm going to long for it. Okay, either I'm going to get it or I'm not going to get it. I hope to get it. And I wish I could live in the place of she'ifas and desire to long to get that thing. And my whole life I'm going to end, I'm never going to get to it. But that's not the Omer. The Omer is saying it like this. No. We start Sefiras HaOmer on Shabbos. We start Sefiras HaOmer on Pesach, really, saying that we're l'mayla min hazman. We're beyond the rhythm of Ratzav V'Shoiv, right? Beyond going and coming, katlas and godless. We're in the state of godless. We're perfect. We're in the state of godless. You see some sign. That's the state of godless that we're gifted on the Seder. L'mayla madroga. That's what we're given. Then comes the next day and says, okay, now I want you to, because you fell and you're living in a place of a duality, of a separation, and a place of longing, where you're not that, even though you are, but you're not living it, so long for it. But simultaneously long for it, knowing that it's who you are already. And therefore, you're longing not to create something that's outside of you, something that you're longing to get, something that's not really you. You're longing to rediscover who you actually are to begin with. And that's why it's Sefiras HaOmer, on one hand, it's l'mayla ben hazman, right? That's how you could, and that's what it's fatal lechem. But you're creating time, you're creating rhythm. On one hand, it's eila masa b'nei Yisrael, it's taka masa, it's taka longing, and that's why the counting. This is probably the Omer of why the counting of the Sefira is Aleph Beis Gimel. Why are we counting up? Because Aleph Beis Gimel says it's the tachlis is not the 59. The tachlis is actually now. The Sefira is opening up to the experience of the Matan Torah in the present, and simultaneously knowing that we're also in a state of journey. So the purpose of the journey is paradoxically to get to the place that we're beyond the journey. You following? So that's why we're counting, but we're not counting 10, 9, 8, 7. 10, 9, 8, 7 means there's no tachlis in the journey. There's no tachlis. What's today? Today is only getting to Matan Torah. No. Matan Torah, the godless of Matan Torah is already now. You're not living it, so count it. Right? You're not living it, so count. So count to get it. So long to get it. But long to get it, to know that it's actually already inherently who you are, where you belong, and you're in the place of the Elokim Chaim. That's who you actually are. And that's the combination between these two things of Sefira, which on one hand seems to be all about, like the Medrash says, Lezoya says, it's all about longing. And then from the other hand, it's all about right now. So that's why Sefira does particularly come after the godless that was given. That's what AriZal is saying. After the godless was given, and leroisay to show the person that's oilamoy. That's what Baal Shem says, that the member of the Masois is to get to the place of oilamoy, to get to the place of your place, to be kind of your makom in this world. You're kind of the makom. You have the place. They should carve out the makom. He didn't makom iti. They should already carved out the space for you. Yeah, when Maybe should Moshe Rabbeinu, Hine Makom Iti, but Matan Torah, it says Hine Makom Iti, that I carved out already a Makom L'fanecha, that you could be Roi Ve'ena, I forgot the Lashon, that name near Roi Ve'ena Mazik or something like that. You're not going to get Ve'ena Nizak. That Maybe says that I carved out the space for you. Now I need you to believe that you have that space. I need you to believe it. So the Sefira is sort of, it has these two oimik, almost two types of avodah. The avodah of kisufim, and the gaguyim of longing and yearning to get to taka a higher place, but recognizing that the higher place is actually mamash who we are. It's mamash who we are. That's what we're gifted. That's who we are. That's what we're born into. And this is the oimik of creating. The Iker day is his day. Now. Today is.
Then you count the number.
That's a good word. It's a good word. Yeah.
So the journey is